I want to wish anybody who has a mother, or had a mother, or has somebody in their family they consider a mother, Happy Mother's Day. My name's Lori, and I will be your MC today. I'm pleased to welcome you here to the Community Room Center and those joining on Facebook Live and YouTube to the Kansas City Oasis. Since 2014, Oasis has been the premier secular alternative to faith-based communities. We welcome all, regardless of beliefs or non-belief, race, gender, sexual orientation, identity, or any other trait. Kick it. Here we go, here we go. Thank you. Oops. We feel the human experience is better when it's shared, and we are so pleased that you have chosen to share it with us this morning. We gather around our 5 core values, which are: people are more important than beliefs, reality is known through reason, human hands solve human problems, meaning comes from making a difference, and be accepting and be accepted. We have a great program for you today. Our speaker is Paul Benson, and his talk is Science in Support of Art History. And our musical guest is Colton Cox, and our community moment today is with Roger Pick. Colton, you can come on up. Colton, since the first time he heard his grandfather play the Chuck Berry classic Johnny Be Good on his '97 Red Fender Stratocaster, Colton Cox has had an enduring love of music, especially from the early years of rock and roll. In 2018, while taking a short break from performing in his previous band, Afro Jim, Colton Cox began delving into new materials, fusing sounds from a wide spectrum of influences, from the classic rock and funk of the 60s and 70s, icons like Bob Dylan and the Beatles, to the more diverse contemporary artists like Queens of the Stone Age and the Black Keys. Towering over most mortals at 6'8", and almost always sporting a big grin under a bushy beard, Colton is truly a jolly giant, and he hopes his music can provide a warm, loving, safe space for those who are in need of a friend. Please give a big Oasis welcome back to Colton Cox.
Haven't had anybody read my bio out loud to me in a while. I might need to update that a little bit. Sorry, I should turn my volume up for you guys. You're saying you want to cry, but your tears are dry. When it felt that way, there's nothing left to say, nothing left to say. 'Cause my lady's on fire, she wants to tear it down. She knows you're a liar. My lady is on fire. She said no, 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 no. No, 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 no.
There's nothing left to say. Nothing left to say. Still my lady's on fire. She wants to tear it down. She knows you're a liar. My lady's on fire. She said no, 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 no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. She said no, 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 no.
Today's a good day to have a guitar covering my body because I've somehow managed to spill coffee on my self twice today already. Good. I'm glad I'm not alone. So the last song was by an artist named Ty Segall. This one is one of mine. Shall come to rest when you fill the black hole in your chest, when knowing what you want isn't such a test, when you think you know what's for the best, you'll forget, you'll forget. You color your words with an honest black brush tongue, painting gold the air inside your lungs. Climb the ladder to the highest rung, scratched in necks where you have just begun. You can start again. You can start again. Smiling at the sound of your own voice. Have you really left yourself a choice? Or have you gone and thrown it all away? Blanketed by all your warmest thoughts, huddled with the half-safe from have-nots, throwing out the past just for a run, living
smiling with the safety you have bought. You can start again. You can start again. In the end, you'll find you are not the one. So saddle up your debts, pass them to your son. He'll carry on your wars you have not won. He'll take the world by force at the end of a gun. You can start again. You can start again. Smiling at the sound of your own voice. Have you really left yourself a choice? Or have you gone and thrown it all away?
Thank you so much. That was lovely. All right, does anybody else have a birthday besides Jennifer Barnes on May 14th? Anybody have an announcement or a birthday celebration that they would like to share with everyone? No? Well, happy birthday to Jennifer Barnes. Happy birthday. Good job. You made it another year. Speaking of celebrating, let's give a big round of applause to our volunteer of the week, Jean Ann Coons. One of the friendly faces that greet people at the door, a great ambassador for newcomers, and she's one of the few who are willing to come early enough to make the coffee. She also stepped up to help she always steps up to help when we are in need. Jean Ann shows up for our work days at the Oasis Community Center, which is vital to maintaining our building. We appreciate you, Jean Ann. Where are you? Where'd she go? Oh, she's sitting at, Jean Ann, good job. She's sitting at the desk, ready to greet any latecomers. Speaking of great volunteers, we are always looking for more to round out our community and to assist with our weekly Sunday gatherings. There's a whiteboard in the lobby where you can sign up for some of the roles and an online sign-up genius posted on our Facebook private group and a QR code in the lobby on the lobby slideshow. If you love this secular community, help us out by keeping it going. Micah Ministry serves hundreds of people a meal on Monday evenings from 5:15 to 7:15. They help anyone regardless of race, gender, religion, or non-religious affiliation, sex, sexual orientation, or any other trait. Come join the Oasis volunteers helping our less fortunate neighbors. Sign up on the Micah Ministries Facebook page. The next one is the 12th. This Thursday, May 15th, will be our next game night. Bring your favorite board game and a snack to share. Let's roll the dice, shuffle the cards, and make some great memories together. Contact Ethan if you have any questions. That's Thursday, May 15th. This month, May's monthly Monday musical has been moved up 1 week to May 19th due to Memorial Day. Join us to sing along with Chicago. Bring your own food and drinks and a comfy chair, because these will kill you. Oh, they're fine for community meeting. They keep you awake. You want to relax. Bring your lawn chairs. We'll start the movie at 6. On the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, we will not have a regular Sunday gathering here. Instead, join our fellow Oasians for fun and frivolity. Bring lawn chairs and a dish to pass. It's going to be at the Westwood Park. It's just 6 blocks south of here. And we'll have a good time out in nature for a change. All right. If you come for the picnic, stay for the book club. This month's book is Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, What the New Science of Psychedelics Teach Us About Consciousness, Dying, Addiction, Depression, and Transcendence. How's that for a mouthful? We'll break off from that picnic at about 1:15 for anyone who wants to join the discussion. The first annual May Flowers Pub Crawl. $10 gets you a punch card and a koozie. Complete your punch card and there will be a drawing for prizes. Punch cards can be purchased ahead of time at the Oasis Sunday gatherings or during the Volker Home Tour or any of the participating locations on May 31st. The best part, proceeds benefit OKC Oasis. The tickets are already available at the knick-knack and stuff table over there. I don't know. Wait, does it have a name? Merch table. Thank you very much. For more details, please check out the event on the Facebook page or kcoasis.org. All right, mark your calendars for all Thursdays in June for bachata dance class with Will Manning, which Will's not here because Julie it's Mother's Day and they're at home with the kids and having a good time, hopefully. No partner is needed, $10 per person per class. But I gotta say it again, bachata. Now, our community moments are opportunities for members of our community to present a topic of their choice during the Sunday gathering. Topics can be related to your profession, hobbies, travel experiences, and volunteer experiences, etc. For today's community moment, we will hear from Roger Pick. 3 words. He described himself: overweight, polite, and fuzzy. And I think the polite weighs out all the other ones. And if he had a warning label, it would be caffeine withdrawal is real. So welcome to the stage, Roger Pick.
Good morning. So, first let me start with an aside. There's been a shifting of responsibilities among the board members, and I'm taking over community moments. And I looked online a couple days ago, and as of a couple days ago, no one has signed up for a community moment past today. So, now this is my responsibility. So my approach to this is next week, if no one else has signed up, I'll do a community moment on how to sign up for community moments. And then if no one signs up by the week after that, it will be me pleading desperately for you to sign up for a community moment. And I'll try to make them more boring week by week so that eventually someone's motivated to sign up. My topic, though, is on... oh, that's my aside, okay. My topic is based on some things I learned I took a trip with Mary Lou last year to New Zealand. It was a cruise along the east coast of the North Island, the west coast of the South Island, and then we went into what are called the sub-Antarctic islands. And on this cruise ship were some conservation officials from both Australia and New Zealand, and I'm going to share with you some of the things I learned from talking to them. By the way, I said subantarctic islands. You might think maybe that's cold. Yes, they were. But still, it's better than August in Kansas City, in my opinion. So, when we were on the ship, the job of these conservation officials was to make sure that we followed the rules. And New Zealand's rules about conservation are much stricter than, say, the rules we encounter in American national parks. For example, we had to have our shoes carefully inspected, making sure there was no plant matter or mud or anything sticking to them whatsoever. We had to use tweezers to pull any seeds that were on Velcro on our outer garments. So my recommendation is if you go on this type of trip to New Zealand, don't wear any outer garments that have Velcro in it, because getting dandelion seeds out of Velcro takes some time. But they were very, very strict about this, and furthermore, they would inspect us after each landing so that we didn't move anything invasive from one island to the next. In addition, on some of the islands, there were additional officials who were there to meet us, and I'll talk a little bit about their day job when they weren't meeting cruise passengers. So here's a picture of a couple of these people who met us. I think it was kind of a highlight of their month when a cruise ship showed up, because they got to see other human beings besides the other like 4 or 5 people that were there on that island. Their day job on the island is to be sharpshooters. And that's kind of the purpose of this talk. Their job is to kill invasive mammals. And but when cruise ship passengers showed up, their job was to check to make sure that we follow the rules. Here's an example of what it was about. So they were standing on this beach to make sure we didn't get too close to these penguins and these sea mammals. And as far as there were trails that we were supposed to follow, and they were quite strict. We were not to ever step off the trail for fear that we would get mud that then we would carry to another island and create an invasive problem. So they're, again, much more strict than American national parks. So what's going on here is New Zealand, as you know, is very, very isolated. And over the course of 80 million years, there's a number of species that have evolved there that aren't found anyplace else. And in particular, there's only 2 varieties of mammal in New Zealand. They're both bats. And then there's, originally found in New Zealand, my wife is correcting me, there's lots of mammals there today, but they're all invasive except for those bats. Even the humans, especially the humans. And then the birds evolved there. I think I have a slide about that, but in case I don't. And by the way, my day job for my 25-year career at UMKC was to give lectures in 75-minute blocks, so I'm quite comfortable talking here for quite a while. The birds evolved into species that aren't generally found elsewhere. Now, some of the seabirds come and go, but a lot of land-based birds just are there in New Zealand. They have forgotten how to fly. They nest on the ground. One island we went to, the snares, we weren't allowed to, we took a Zodiac tour around the snares, but we couldn't get off because it said it's almost impossible for a person to walk on the snares without stepping on a spot and having their foot go through the ground into a burrow and crushing a bird that's nesting underground. So we couldn't go on that particular island. But the point is, these birds don't know how to fly. They've forgotten, they're not afraid of us. I think I have a picture to illustrate that point. Okay. I've got to go through these quickly because Jason warned me I've got way too many slides, but penguins are just so cute. I had to have a few of those. This is a kiwi. This is not my photo. I took a picture of a kiwi at a conservation center, and it sort of looked like a bowling ball with a beak. This is a much better picture than anything I was able to take. This is the national bird for the New Zealanders. The idea of the kiwi going extinct affects them the way the idea of the bald eagle going extinct would affect an American. And the kiwis are nearly extinct. They nest on the ground. They're nocturnal, and again, they're not afraid of mammals. These birds. There was a film they showed when we were on the ship. I didn't even try to find it because it's so. They show a bird sitting on a ground nest, a rat coming up to the bird. The bird just sort of stares at it dumbly, and the rat takes a bite out of the bird. And then the rat goes on to eat the eggs. It's just, the birds have no fear of mammals. They haven't been around mammals for 80 million years. These are gannets. These are our photos, and this is a close-up to see it, but here's the wider situation. So that's Mary Lou there. And the gannets, again, these can fly, but they nest on the ground, and we were just not very important to them. The only thing keeping us, there was a rope kind of keeping us from going into their area, but the gannets occasionally would jump off a nest and walk over and kind of eyeball us, saying, "Oh, those are different," and they would take a look at us, and then they'd wander back and sit on their nest. But it was very crowded. I can't begin to describe how many of these birds there are. These are not just found in New Zealand, but this is kind of the situation you would find over and over again with these birds, that they nest on the ground, no fear or interest in mammals, and therefore are very vulnerable. These are a couple photos I took of some birds on a beach. Again, they're land-bound. These are very typical birds in New Zealand. They're kind of got big fat bodies like me and little legs and no wings, or hardly any wings. These are some ducks that are only found in New Zealand. This was a trail we were on, and again, these could fly if they were motivated, but they nested on the ground. So there have been, I think I've already said a lot of things on this slide, but the invasive mammals are driving these birds to extinction. A number of species are already extinct. New Zealand is committed to not allowing this to happen anymore. And so their solution is to eradicate the invasive mammals. And this, you can get queasy about this. There's a lot of collateral damage when you try to kill invasive mammals. I don't know what they're going to do when they reach the point where they start to work on inhabited islands, because people are going to have to give up their pets in some way, and I'm not sure how that's going to go for them. So the effort began about 65 years ago. They covered entire islands with poison. Today, they have eradicated mammals from over 300 islands, most of them very small. They've done less than 1% of the area of New Zealand. The way they do this today is on an island where the mammals have been eradicated. They have traps just in case a rat swims to that island. They have traps to try to monitor to see if they've been reinvaded. So on the islands that are not yet predator-free, they use poison, they use sharpshooters, they use traps. Again, those people who were guiding us when we were walking on that island, their day job is to shoot animals. I visited with one of the conservation officials. What kind of people do you recruit for this job? And part of it, one thing that surprised me is they weren't particularly interested that someone be a skilled shooter. That isn't all that important. If you don't know how to shoot, they can teach you how to do that. What they can't teach you is how to get along in a confined space with a small number of other people for 6 months. So that's one. And the other is persistence, because They keep these sharpshooters on an island for 5 years after the last sighting of a mammal. So when they first start out on an island, they're new, they're shooting a lot of mammals every day. And every day it's a few less and a few less until they go for days and then weeks and then months without seeing a mammal. And they have to keep walking and looking and trying to find them. So they have to be persistent, and that's the personal quality they look for the most. They have a goal of eradicating all the invasive mammals off their islands by 2050. I don't think that's even remotely possible, but it's an aspirational goal. Right now, about 1%, a little less than 1% of their land area has been eradicated. They've had some success on individual islands, and we actually took a walk on a peninsula where they had a really bodacious fence. The fence went up in the air, and then the fence also went underground to keep invasive mammals from crossing from the area where they had eradicated to where they had not. And they periodically will set up a second fence and then do eradication with that area, and then the fences march down this peninsula. And that's the process they do. So sharpshooters, poison and traps. I had never heard of a stoat before I took this trip. I didn't know what a stoat was, but it's a weasel-like animal. The first recorded invasive mammal was a rat that was a stowaway. Mice also stowed away. Wrap up. Others were introduced deliberately, believe it or not. So they introduced rabbits because they thought they'd be good to eat. Then the rabbits overpopulated, so they introduced stoats to eat the rabbits. And then it turned out the stoats like to eat birds more than they like to eat rabbits. And so it's just been a problem. This is a stoat trap. We saw these over and over and over again, frequently next to trails. They're going with some new technologies today, automated traps that reset themselves. They're trying to use better, more targeted rodenticides so there's less collateral damage. They're using AI on some devices that spray a toxin on the fur of a animal, which then when it grooms itself, it poisons itself. And so that's going on. So thank you for your attention. I do have a QR code for a 19-minute slideshow, which you probably won't want to watch, but if you want to listen to me bragging about my trip, these are... This is actually a slideshow that was put together jointly by the guests on this cruise ship. Thank you very much.
Good job. All right, it's coffee break time. And I'm supposed to click on the green bar, and that starts the countdown. So have a good break, and we'll see you back in 20 minutes or so. We did it. Do I click on it again? That is one fast mouse. There we go. So now we're going to welcome back Colton Cox again. He's going to do a nice little ditty for us, and then we will have our guest speaker. Welcome back. Let's all give Colton a big round of applause. We're so glad he came back and performed for us again. Thank you, Colton.
Absolutely. I am going to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion. Something that's changed since the last time I was here is I actually own my own business now. I have a, thank you. I own a music teaching studio right over on 39th Street, actually. I don't know who all lives in the area, but if you know where Prospero's is, the bookstore, I'm right catty corner from them. So, well, yeah. Teach guitar and piano and all sorts of stuff. So talk to me about it if you're interested. Sitting in the back seat, lost, coming undone. No hands on the wheel, just rhythm and steel, driving you on, straight through the dawn, till the feeling is gone, straight through the dawn. Oh, live life on the run, chasing down a blue sky dream, but I don't know the road. Take me to the summer breeze, where I don't feel so cold, and take control, driving you on, straight through the dawn, driving you on. Oh, look what you've become. So spare me your well-picked words and metaphor, and give me some real words worth fighting for. I'm gonna let out my evil thoughts and redirect them into loving arms. I'm gonna
that lust for life.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And everybody needs to tip him at his Venmo, and they need to join his Facebook page and go to his website. It's all there for you. We make it so easy. Our program is designed to generate conversation and engage our powers of reason, not as a forum to start debates. The following presentation has been prepared by our speaker and not by KC Oasis. Please respect the views of our speaker, and if you have any questions, a Q&A portion will follow. Paul joined the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in 1992 and is recently retired. During his 25-plus years, he served as the conservator of objects, where he was involved in examining, advising on, and treating three-dimensional art objects made from all types of materials. He also had a private conservation business where he treats art objects for museums and private owners, and outdoor sculptures and fountains for municipalities. Municipalities. There we go. And homeowners. Homeowner associations in the greater Kansas City area. He's a busy bee. Paul received his BS in geology in 1972 from Kent State University. He worked in geophysical exploration for the oil industry in the U.S., South America, and the South Pacific from 1973 to 1986. My gosh, you must have some stories. After being laid off during the oil crisis of '86, he changed careers and entered the art conservation field. He received a BSc in archaeological conservation and material sciences in 1991 from the Institute of Archaeology, University of London. Whew. Summers during the conservation training program were spent at the British Museum Organic Conservation Lab and the English Heritage Rescue Archaeological Lab. Man, you were saving stuff left and right. I'd like to welcome all to Paul Benson to Oasis. Please come on up, Paul. His title of his speech today is Science in Support of Art History.
Thank you, Lord Norton. Yep.
I get my mic, you get
I'm all set. I want to start out by saying it's going to be tough to follow penguins, and then I've never had to do that before, and I hope I don't do it again, actually. Anybody who goes to a museum, probably one of the first things you ask yourself is this stuff real? How old is it? What's it made of? And those are some of the questions that curators will answer, but a lot of times it requires a little bit more than that. And that's when we get into science to help out, that they can make their opinions. This is kind of a list of a lot of the analytical techniques that are used to look at art. Most of them have acronyms because nobody can pronounce the techniques. And then again, you forget what the acronyms stand for after a while, so you just have a tendency to ignore them. Most of these are so exotic or expensive, nobody uses them except on a very, very high-end art. But we're going to discuss a few of the things that maybe are a little more recognizable to you folks. The first thing we're going to look at is sometimes you don't really need science to tell you if things real or not. These are lead pilgrim badges, and you can see one of them dates from 1030. So that makes it pretty obvious which one is real and which one isn't. The only problem with that is the one that's dated is the fake. And the reason it's a fake, even if it looks very crude and fake-like, Well, that's because it is. In the year 1030, the date would have been in Arabic number, would have been in Roman numerals, not Arabic numbers. So you don't need any science to figure that out. If you looked at it a little bit differently, we could actually tell where these pieces came from. Now, it is possible to use lead isotope analysis on lead to figure out what part of the world they came from. And in the Middle Ages, you basically only had 3 choices of where the lead would be mined. If you found that the lead came from Australia in the year 1030, you would probably suspect there's a problem. Chemical composition is another way we look at things. This coin, you can see dates from quite a while ago, and it contains a lot of nickel, which is unusual because nickel really wasn't isolated till about 1751. So that's pretty obvious again that this can't be real, except it is. Where did they get the nickel from back in 190 BC? Meteorites. So it's possible that even though you get something it's not what you think it should be, you really have to look at another technique to make sure that it is right. One of the easier things to look at is infrared imaging. This is a very, very famous painting of Giovanni Arnolfini, his marriage. And a close-up under IR light, you can see that the position of the hand has been changed a little bit. And that's actually a good indication because artists usually have changes in their paintings. They don't just get up there and paint it once and they're done. So if you can see a change like this, that's actually a very good indication that you're looking at the real thing done by that artist. Here's some interesting, this is thermoluminescence dating of ceramics. That's basically the only way you can date ceramics. And then I'll just give you a real brief little bit about the theory on this. When you take a ceramic, you make it out of clay, obviously. There's other minerals in the clay. When you fire it to harden it, any kind of radiation which might be in those minerals is driven off. So if there's a way of checking how much radiation is now still left in the minerals, you can just work backwards to tell you what the date of this thing is. It's actually a very precise technique. Well, one of these is real and one of them isn't. You can't look and you can't tell by looking at it which one is right. But if you do the thermoluminescence dating, you would get charts that look like this. They're called a glow curve. And with that, you can tell which one is real. And just so you know, it's the one on that side is the real one. And you wouldn't tell it any other way. Carbon-14 dating is something I think everybody's heard of, but you probably know that it's all done with organic material. It has to do with living things acquiring carbon-14 from the atmosphere. When they die, they don't accumulate any more carbon-14. So again, you just have to figure out how much is in there, and you can tell how old it is. But you'll also might notice on there's iron on that list. Iron certainly is not an organic material, but iron, once it's melted, usually contains carbon, but carbon is datable. So even though it's unusual things on that, you can carbon-14 date them. It's a fairly accurate date. You can't date modern things after 1950. That's when they usually have a cutoff date because of atomic bomb testing. There's a lot more radioactivity in the atmosphere, and that throws off the dates. This is what you get when you do a carbon-14 test. That's kind of the chart you get. And it's interesting because sometimes you get a series of dates. So and sometimes they can be pretty wide. So you'll say, well, it's either this date or that date. There's a certain, what do we call it, a range of dates, and you still have to figure it out. So it's good, but it's not perfect. And this is something that you probably don't have in the basement of your house. This is an accelerator, and this is what you use to do the carbon-14 tests. It just takes a very, very small amount of material nowadays. And that's one thing you have to be careful of. If you want anything tested to see if what you have, how old it is, if it's real, the chemical composition, if you take it to a lab, they're going to tell you all of our tests are non-destructive, which means you give them a sample, they do their work on it, and they return the sample to you. The sample is not destroyed. But in the art field, it is destroyed because you have done a destructive test by taking a sample from your artwork. And that's what you don't want to do. So curators don't like you taking samples of their artwork. That's strictly a no-no. So they're getting more and more sophisticated tests where samples are not necessary. Dendrochronology, I may have heard that, that's tree rings. Now this is probably the most accurate way of dating wood. It doesn't take a sample. You can actually take a panel painting or a frame or a wooden sculpture, and just by studying enough, you can actually just keep working your way back until you figure out how old it is. It's a very interesting technique and very accurate. This is what you get when you do a dendrochronology analysis. And as you can see at the bottom of this, there are 3 panel paintings by a very famous artist, Roger van der Weyden. And there's the actual date that he painted it as far as art history is concerned. Then there's a date which was determined by dendrochronology, and there's a very, very good correspondence. So this is a very, very accurate way of looking at things. You can also analyze what type of wood is being used. And if you look at this chart, and these are from Europe, the Flemish paintings are always done on oak. If you find a Flemish painting that's done on linden wood, it's a red flag. You might say this may not be real. So again, you have to analyze the materials. In the U.S., there's a wood products lab in Wisconsin which does this for you, and they're very good, and they don't charge much, so it's something you might consider. Paintings always have a ground layer. Well, not always, but most times, traditionally, there's a ground layer which goes on your canvas or your board first, and the paint goes on top of that. Well, when you look at the ground layer, there's basically 2 different kinds. You have a natural chalk, which is the one you can see that's got little fossils in it, little bits of shell. That's what chalk is made of. The one on the other side is a precipitated calcium carbonate. That means it's made from a chemical process. It's much more pure. There are no shells in it. But that wasn't developed until about 1850. So if you're looking at a Renaissance painting that has a precipitated calcium carbonate base on it, you might be a little suspicious of that. But again, there could be a reason for it, which I won't go into, but it's just another one of those red flags that does help you with dating. A much more sophisticated test is called Fourier Transform Infrared Spectroscopy, or FTIR, so you don't have to remember that all the time. And what that does is it takes a very tiny, tiny little sample, subjects it to infrared light, and it can give you a chemical analysis of it. In this case, we're looking at Northwest Coast Mass. Some of them, one group is real, the other ones were supposedly found on a beach, and it's pretty tough to tell which is which without doing an analysis of it. Well, one thing you can look at is the kind of pigments that are available on these things. In this particular case, this FTIR gives you the spectrum. In blue, it's actually the paint from one of those masks, and the red is sort of, for a comparison, is from an acrylic emulsion. Now, those masks were made a long time ago, long before acrylics were ever made. So in this particular case, it shows you that that black paint was an acrylic. So whichever one of those groups it came from, that can't be real. So you just have to eliminate that. This is a miniature painting. These things are just fabulous. I just love these. But there are a lot of forgeries on the market. This particular one was made by a man called the Spanish Forger, who nobody knows who he is, and he's never been identified, but they're pretty sure he's French. So why he's a Spanish forger, I don't know. It's probably done by the English. You know how they like to kid the French a little bit. Anyway, you can look at the blue pigment from the gown and say, what kind of blue is this? Where did this blue pigment come from? Well, that particular one is a Mayan blue, and the Mayan blue was developed in the New World. The Mayan Indians, indigenous folks, developed this blue pigment. And the other one on your showing is indigo. Indigo blue has been around for a long time, so it's possible that that could be medieval, but in this case with the Mayan blue, you can guarantee that this is a piece by the Spanish forger. Well, here's a kind of a history of when pigments were introduced. Now, this has taken quite a while to put together, but it's a very, very good indication of what you have. There's such things as, let's say, lead white. Well, lead white has been around forever. I mean, that goes all the way back to Greek and Roman and before, but even before that. So if you find lead white on an object, you can say that might be okay. But if you find something like a titanium white, well, titanium white, what does it say for the date on that? Pretty recently, in the 1900s, so that probably isn't correct. Having the right lead in lead white is very important. You can actually make your own lead white. I won't tell you where, but the source of old lead is available right here in Kansas City. So if you wanted to, say, forge a piece of old art, the lead is available, and you can make your lead white from that, and it will pass just about any test you can imagine, but I'm not going to tell you where it is. But for a couple bucks, well, you might never know. This slide is in the wrong place. I just noticed that this morning, but keep it in mind that we're going to talk about it later. And if anybody remembers a jewelry company called Jordis Verley, it was in Brookside for a few years, that is something that they made. So we'll get back to this. Here's a beautiful Dutch painting from the 17th century. And this is very typical of what they would have produced back then. But there was some questions about this. So is this right? Well, so they started looking at the pigments. They did a few more tests on it. A fairly easy test, which just about any museum or even you can take things to the hospital if you want to. St. Luke's is very, I don't want to tell you they'll x-ray it for you, but they do for the Nelson. Well, they x-ray that, and that's what you find. So underneath those flowers was a woman dressed in an 18th century dress. So how is that possible? How can you get an 18th century painting underneath a 17th century painting? It doesn't make any sense. So that's the first red flag. But you also notice that there are no flowers anymore. What happened to the flowers? Back in the 17th century, they would have used the lead white in their pigments, and the lead would show up in an x-ray, but it's not there. So you find out it's actually a titanium white, and titanium is invisible to x-rays, and that's why it doesn't show up. The x-rays just go right through it, and you don't see it. Now, back to thermoluminescence dating. There are two objects here, a cute little dog and a big tomb tile. If you did a test on these thermoluminescence tests, you would find that they're both right. They both date to the right time period. So just taking out one test alone, you would say everything is fine. There's absolutely no problem. But if you look a little bit further, this is an x-ray of the dog, and you see some unusual things there. And what you're seeing are different slabs of material. So the little dog is made up of slabs, which they would never be made that way. So what the person has done here, they've taken a real tomb tile, cut it up into pieces, rubbed off the design on it, and glued them together to form this little dog. So now it passes the thermoluminescence test. So it's something that you really do have to look out for, and not to cast any dispersions, but if you collect Chinese art, you need to be very, very careful. They are masters at doing things like this. All right, here's an actual example from the Nelson. The plate you see there that looks very nice. It's in normal light, it's a 17th century Maiolica plate, probably from either Spain or Italy. It looks very nice. When you think about a 300-year-old ceramic plate, there should be some chips or something on it. It's going to get wear and tear. Well, you look at it in ultraviolet light, which is a very easy test. Most places, art dealers, museums, have a little handheld UV light, a black light, that you can shine on things, and it'll show you a difference in the pigments. As you can see in the middle, there's something going on in the middle of this plate that's not going around the edge. So that's raised some suspicions. So then when you take an x-ray of that plate, you'll find, and I hope it shows up, that that plate has been broken right down through the middle of it and reassembled. Now the interesting thing about that, to me anyway, I hope you can see it, but there's a staple right there. That's what's holding it together. There is no adhesive on this, it's staples holding it together. There's 3 of them on there, and that is good. That's good news, because back in the old days, they didn't have very good adhesives, so holding things together with staples was very, very common. So that's a good sign. But when you look in the middle of that plate, again, the x-rays are reacting differently from the middle to the outside. And with a little more examination, you'll find that the entire middle of that plate has been missing. It's been, when it was broken, it was probably all chipped away. A restorer came back in there, put new material in there, and repainted the whole thing. And that's why you see a difference under ultraviolet light between the center and the edges. Now, restoration and conservation are 2 different things. Restoring a plate like that, if you were just at home collecting things, that would probably be all right. But in the museum world, how did that person restoring that know what that middle of that looked like and was gone? I mean, is he using his imagination? When you look at everything on there, all of this, is that real or not? Is that just an imagination, or is that the real thing? And you just can't tell, so they would not display this. So this piece, even though it looks great, it is not on display at the museum, because we don't want to fool anybody into thinking that's what a 17th century plate looked like. Well, how do you date stone? Well, you can date stone, but it'll tell you it's 10 million years old. And this piece would have had been made by a dinosaur, 10 million years ago. So right off the bat, you say, you've got a problem. How do we do this? Well, 2 dentists came up with an idea a few years ago of taking a silicone rubber mold of holes, putting the molds in what's the big fancy microscope? Electron microscope, thank you. It happens occasionally, sorry. Putting in an electron microscope and seeing what it looks like. They did a lot of tests, a lot of studies, and found out holes look different depending on how they were made. And there's a whole history of hole making. You just have a wooden rod using sandus adhesive, rubbing with a bow the back and forth, using sand, using water, using flint. Holes look different. So this little piece has an eye, it has a hole. So that's what they did. They used a silicone rubber mold, put it in an electron microscope, and lo and behold, the cast in the bird's eye looks exactly like the cast from a Black & Decker drill bit. So this is a way of saying, okay, we don't think this piece is right, because a couple thousand years ago, you couldn't go down to the hardware store and buy a Black & Decker, and it didn't exist. So, yeah, and it's a very unusual technique. It's old, but usable. Here's a painting, again, from the Nelson. It's dated 1667 by Claude Lorraine. But it's interesting how they came up with that. It was not determined by the museum. It was purchased that way. And the odd thing is, this painting is not signed. There is no signature anywhere on this. There's no date on it anywhere. It had to be determined through the provenance of this piece. So to put it in the artist in his work in 1667 is speculation. It's probably very good speculation, but you can't prove it, or can you? You'll notice there's a piper right there, sitting on a bale of hay. And that is his foot. That's the piper's foot coming down there. That's the bale of hay. And using a Photoshop technique, you're getting on here, you probably can't read it, but it says Claude Lorraine, Rome, 1667, and now that's visible. That's actually multispectral imaging done in a PowerPoint, Photoshop, sorry. And that was actually done here at the Nelson, so now we can prove when it was dated, when it was done, where it was done, and who did it. And this is something which basically can be done with very good digital images and your good old PowerPoint. No, Photoshop. You get stuck on a word sometimes. All right, we're back to silver. Now, this is a problem I know everybody in here has had. When your silver tarnishes, you have your staff polish the silver for you. And of course, they're not very careful about how they're polishing your silver. You don't pay them enough. That's what they'll say anyway. And silver needs to be polished every now and then to keep it looking like that. So basically, over the course of only 15 years of cleaning, you can destroy hallmarks that are on the surface of the silver. And these hallmarks give you a lot of information about the history of the piece. It tells you where it was made, when it was made, who made it, the quality of the silver. So the entire history of the piece is there on these hallmarks. Now this particular one I'm showing is from an English piece. The English hallmarking system was codified in the year 1300. They were very strict about their hallmarks. You could actually be put to death by falsifying hallmarks. They took this very seriously. So you got a piece, your grandmother gave you this Paul Revere charger, you think this is great, it's worth a lot of money, but there are no hallmarks on it, it's been polished away. What do? How do you know that this was actually made by Paul Revere? Well, there is a way of doing that. You've all heard of ultrasounds. I know all the women have heard of ultrasounds. Well, by using sound instead of light, you can get a picture of these hallmarks. Even though they're not visible on the surface, they're still there. This is that coupon that we showed you, done by Jordis Verily, and there's what it looks like, taken with an acoustic microscope. Allied Signal, or Honeywell's is called now, took the silver coupon, polished off the hallmarks. I carried it around in my pocket for a while to put scratches on it to simulate an old piece, and took it out to them, and they used it to use their technique with sound waves to get back a very good image of what used to be there, even though you can't see it anymore. So now I can prove what was on this coupon. Here's a real life example. This spoon was supposed to have been done by a man named Thomas Wallace. There was enough of the hallmark left that you can just kind of get an idea of what it looks like. There's a T, and maybe you would say there's a W over here, but whatever was over here has been polished away. So with speculation it's been Thomas Wallace. Well, subjecting it to the acoustic microscopy, there it is. You get an image back of what you can't see. And I highlighted what you're looking at to make it a little bit easier. This is an H. Again, this is an English one, so you know it was done in 1783. Now you can see the full T, you can see the full W, and with a little imagination, that's actually a lion, so you know that it does a little bit more about it. And it's a very, very good technique. It's been used, well, this hasn't been used a lot. This is actually an answer to a non-problem, unfortunately. This work was done with General Electric Research and Development in New York. And we came up with this technique, and we thought this was going to really solve a lot of problems, but so far it hasn't. I'm not rich yet or famous because of this, and it's very disappointing. Lapis, back in the good old days, lapis was only available from Afghanistan. So if you had a piece of lapis, and you would say this piece is very old, you better be from Afghanistan. Well, as more sources of lapis became known, you could start doing tests, doing isotope analysis on your sulfur. And you can see the grouping on this chart here. All the Afghanistani lapis has a certain chemical composition, an isotope ratio. And if this one is supposed to have been from that, it's dating from the right time period, but that is actually from Lake Baikal in Siberia, so it can't be nearly as old as they think it is. This is a very interesting one. This is a marble head, supposed to be a picture of Livia. Livia was the wife of Augustus, a Roman emperor, and for many, many years, it was a whole, complete bust. This is in Denmark, is where this is from. Well, eventually, somebody looked at it and found that part of the head was a replacement, the nose was a replacement compared to the rest of the piece. And again, by looking at different isotopes in the marble, it came from 3 different places. So I think originally, when this was discovered, they thought the bust was just broken and somebody had put the pieces back together. But that's not what really happened. They put the pieces together, they made them from different types of marble. So now, that's the way it's displayed, and they've actually changed the whole attribution to it. So it's not Livia, it's Agrippina now. So that shows you how that really did change a little art history. Well, that is my very quick presentation, so we have time for questions, and not everybody ask questions at the same time. Please wait for the microphone to come around so that everybody can hear your question.
All right. Start at the front of the room here.
So I understand that there is an ultrasound or a acoustic analysis method of or maybe of analyzing metals.
Yes.
You don't have to use X-ray fluorescence any longer.
Now, what's good about this technique is this is completely non-destructive. A sample is not needed. So you can just take your piece of silver or whatever to a lab that does this. There is actually a lab in Iowa which can do this on a paying basis. And you can look at the hallmarks, if they're still there, and determine the whole history of the piece.
Well, what I was wondering is the makeup of the piece in terms of metals.
Mm-hmm.
So is it possible to do that now with a method other than X-ray fluorescence?
Well, the method that we're using here depends on the classification of the metal crystals. Silver and gold, other metals come from what's called the cubic side of metal. And there's certain things you can do with the cubic things in the cubic stages, other ones you can't. Gold is something which is in the cubic system, but unfortunately gold is what's called a self-annealing material, which means a piece of gold, if you put a hallmark on it, just through time, the hallmark will just disappear because the metal will soften up enough that it just goes back to its original state. Silver doesn't do that. So this is one advantage of the acoustic method, one disadvantage. Where you can really work out is, you know how thieves steal a gun and then they file off the serial number, they're home free? Nah. Even though it's filed off, you can still take this down and have a serial number recovered from it. There's no acid etching or anything like this. When we were doing this at General Electric, out of a clear blue sky and for no apparent reason, some gentlemen from the U.S. Navy showed up and were very curious about this topic, how we were doing this. And it's still a mystery how they found out about it. They thought they might be able to use this in something to do with arms. And the man with GE was just astounded that anybody knew this was happening. So he started looking around, for bugs as a lab bug, but we still don't know how they found out about it.
I have a feeling that technique is going to be very important in the future, probably long after you're dead. I wanted to know, you were talking about the paintings and how they used natural chalk way back in the day, right? How would they test the chalk when there's paint on top? And then you said that a wood in a painting, like the frame could be tested as well. How do they sample the wood and test the wood without damaging the painting?
Okay.
And then third question. How is testing specifically destructive to samples? Like, what do they do to it to destroy it?
All right, well, we'll start with the first question. You've got your ground layer and a pigment on top of it. And you're right, how do you see the ground? Well, if you take a very, very small sample, usually from the edge, they come off together. So you just turn it upside down, then you can see the ground layer on it. Yeah, that's very simple. You try to take it from the edge, or maybe it's a little, maybe the surface paint is gone from the edge, maybe it's already damaged. So a tiny, tiny little sample, and I'm talking about a small sample, usually with a needle is how you take it. That's how small of a sample you can get away with on that and tell what kind of chalk it was. And the second question, I'm afraid I got lost.
You said that you could test the frame of a painting, the wood.
Now, do you want it for identification or for age?
So you talked about age and how, like, obviously, you know, when a tree grows, it has rings in it.
Okay.
I didn't quite understand your diagram you had up there of how to test the frame of a painting.
Okay. Well, when you make a frame, obviously it's made of 4 pieces. So you have 2 cut surfaces on each piece of wood. You just have to take the frame apart, and there are going to be your tree rings are going to be visible, and you just have to start comparing those tree rings to known tree ring samples. And there are libraries of this from all over the world, and you just have to see your 20 or 30 rings that you might have on that. How does that match up and where on the 20 or 30 other rings someplace in the world? And that'll give you what the age is on that. So you don't need the full ring history from 0 to when the tree was cut down. But you also have to remember that when a tree is cut down, maybe it's going to be aged for a while. So a lot of people like to take carbon-14 and tree ring analysis at the same time in comparison, but it doesn't always work out that way. So if you want to date it better, always go with the tree rings. And the third question?
Yeah, so when you're, if you were going to take a sample from something to test how old it was, you mentioned that there are ways to test that are destructive.
Yes.
Which ways are those, and how are they destructive, and how have we kind of evolved from that?
All right. Well, there are lots of ways to do that. The easiest one, when we talked about, was FTIR, the Fourier Transform Infrared Spectroscopy. There are actually handheld models now that look like a laser gun, something you see in a science fiction movie. You just have to hold it against, say, a painting or a sculpture, and it will give you a nice chart of what the chemical composition is of that. No samples need to be taken. The thing just has to be big enough that you can put the head of this FTIR gun against it, and it'll tell you what it is. Now, it'll tell you exactly what the chemical composition is, but now it's up to you to analyze that. What does it really mean? If something contains copper and lead, so what? Like, now you know it contains copper and lead, but what does that mean? That's the unfortunate thing. Labs can do this for you. A Midwest Research Institute, MRI, down in the plaza, they can do this, but they're not necessarily able to tell you what it means. So you pay someone to do the analysis for you. You may have to pay somebody else to tell you what it actually means. So that is one of the best non-destructive ways of analyzing things. What is what?
A destructive. What's a destructive way?
Taking a sample and then subjecting it to all kinds of different tests. There's atomic absorption spectroscopy. There's just all kinds of other things. Another FTIR the technique can be used. It's a very a different technique that's older and destructive. But again, just have to remember, do you want your sample back or not? And will you be able? Do you want a sample taken from your piece?
Anytime you have to scrape something off, that's destructive. Well, let's all thank Paul for his great presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
While our musician is coming back on the stage, I want to remind everyone that Kansas City Oasis is a 501c3 nonprofit run solely on donations and volunteers. If you like the topic and the music today, please consider donating to them through Venmo or to kansascityoasis.org/donate. We also have a tip jar for the musician today. Reoccurring monthly donations to KC Oasis are greatly appreciated so we can budget future projects. Go ahead, Colton, wrap it up for us. Welcome back, Colton Cox.
Thanks for having me today, everybody. I was talking to somebody today, and I think this is my 5th or 6th time playing for Oasis, and I think the first time was back in 2020. So you guys are always great, though. You're so very nice to me and very supportive, so I appreciate you all for having me. I haven't even started yet, okay? Lie down with me, my dear. Lie down. Stormy night, tell brother, where do you intend to go tonight? I heard that you missed your connecting flight to the Blue Ridge Mountains over near Tennessee. You're ever welcome with me anytime you like. I think I lost sound on my guitar. But no one gets worried, no. So no one gets worried, no. But Sean, don't get careless. I'm sure it'll be fine. I love you, oh good brother of mine. In the quivering forest, where the sleeping dog rests, our good grandfather built a wooden nest, and the river got frozen, and the home got snowed
my child. Oh, even if you don't mind, in the quivering forest where the sleeping dogs rest, our good grandfather built a wooden nest, and the river got frozen, and the home was snowed in, and the yellow moon glowed bright beneath the morning light. Terrible am I, child. Oh, even if you don't mind, no.
Thank you, everybody.
So if anybody wants to take guitar lessons, you know where to go. Thank you, Colton. We have lunch plans available if you want to join us for lunch and continue the conversation at the Tower Tavern. It's a good place. I had the Caesar salad last time. It was very good. 401 East 31st Street. Before you head out to lunch, take a few minutes to help clean up. There are many volunteer opportunities for Oasis each week. Check the descriptions attached to the private page on Facebook to sign up and view them also on the whiteboard in the lobby. So look around and pick up after yourself. Next week, May 18th, our featured speaker will be our very own Julie Samuel Lambert, talking about how we can apply ergonomic principles at work and home. Our musical guest will be double treble, Lisa Phillips on flute, and Mary Burnett on clarinet. I like that, Burnett, clarinet. We want to thank again this week's presenter, Paul and Roger, and our musical guest, Colton. And thank you all for being here and tuning in on Facebook Live and YouTube. We'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.